Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Takia with Legal Aid of North Carolina's Helpline. Today we have presenter Juliana presenting for us. If you are unfamiliar with the format of this event, first Juliana is going to review a PowerPoint presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box on Zoom or the comment section on Facebook. We'll review all questions put in the chat boxes during the Q&A session at the end. Please remember that this is a public forum and legal aid is not representing you at this time. Be sure not to reveal personal details about yourself and to keep your questions as general as possible, as we cannot provide any legal advice specific to your individual situation. This session will end when there are no more questions, and regardless of where we are, we will have a hard stop at 4:30. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Juliana to get us started.
Thank you, Takia. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to attend the SNAP 101 Listen and Learn. Today, I'm going to review four major topics in the SNAP 101, which is the application, how you can maximize your benefits, the recertification process, and knowing your rights. Again, as Takia had mentioned, while I'm an attorney, I am not your attorney, and this is not advice. First, what is SNAP? SNAP is known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is known as SNAP, and in North Carolina, it's also known as the Food and Nutrition Services or food stamps. The program provides low-income households with money each month to help them purchase food. That money is placed on a reusable EBT card, and it can only be used to purchase eligible foods. How you apply for SNAP. There are a few ways that you can apply for SNAP. You can do so in person at your local DSS office, by fax, mail, or the ePass system, which is their online portal. Every applicant has a right to file an application on the same day that they visit the DSS during office hours. After you submit that application, you'll be interviewed by a caseworker. And for more information on how to apply, we have the hyperlink attached. So the basic rules of eligibility include that you must have an eligible immigration status, which we'll dive into next. You must be a North Carolina resident, and you must also meet the income rules. But for some people, there are also work requirements. These work requirements are waived during the public health emergency during the COVID pandemic, but they have restarted. So the immigrant eligibility, there are multiple different eligible statuses. The first one is any U.S. citizen. Next, you could be a lawful permanent resident, but you generally cannot apply for to receive SNAP benefits until 5 years after you've lawfully entered the United States. You could also be a refugee, asylee, Afghan, special immigrant, or parolee. And just as a note, not everyone in the household has to have that one of those eligible income immigration statuses. You can apply just for the members of your household that would have eligible immigration statuses. And as a safeguard, DSS cannot require you to provide a social security number for a household member who is not applying for those SNAP benefits. And so this chart is an overview of the income rules. Generally, the income is determined based on either the household size or categorical eligibility. Categorical eligibility means that your household is below 200% of the federal poverty line, and there are no disqualified household members. And for SNAP, it's also important to remember that there are no categorical eligibility, there are no asset limits when you are categorically eligible. So as you see on the slide, the maximum income amount goes up as your household size increases. SNAP also has a felony controlled substance ban. So any individual who has committed and was convicted of a state or federal law on or after August 23rd, 1996, of any offense classified as a felony by the law of that jurisdiction, um, with an element of possession, use, or distribution of a controlled substance is permanently disqualified from SNAP, meaning you can never earn that benefit. However, there is an exception. So, people who have been convicted of Class H or I felonies that involve one of those elements I listed previously, they may reestablish SNAP eligibility if you meet minimum disqualification period after your release from custody, which is typically 6 months, and are referred to an area mental health authority for assessment. Moving on to the work requirements that I had mentioned before, that may apply as one of your eligibility rules. So to continue receiving those SNAP benefits, an able-bodied adult without dependents, meaning you don't have children or someone dependent on you, must work 80 hours a month, which is about 20 hours a week, or be participating in another qualified work program at that same rate. This work can include employment, self-employment, volunteer work, or work in exchange for goods and services, or a combination of any of those. But there are reporting requirements with that. There's also a good cause exception. So if you would have worked those 80 hours in your month, but you miss some work for a good cause that DSS deems to be a good cause, you'll still be considered to have met those work requirements, even in the absence of work, if it was temporary and you retained your job. So here I have listed some good examples that include things like illnesses, an emergency in your household, or temporary unavailability due to a lack of transportation and things like that. If you don't meet these work requirements or another exception to get you out of those work requirements, and you are under the able-bodied adult without dependent standard, you can only receive SNAP for any 3 months in a 36-month period, unless you become qualified under one of the exceptions thereafter. And some of those exemptions that I had just mentioned, the ABOD standards do not apply for people under the age of 18 or who are at least 55 years old. If you're also in between that range, but you live in a household that contains members under the age of 18, you can be exempted from the work requirements. Other ones include being pregnant, homeless, particular veteran statuses, regardless of your condition of your discharge, being between the age of 18 and 24 when you were in foster care until you turned 18, or another category is being unfit for employment. And that includes receiving workers' comp, disability benefits, or Medicaid based on your disability. And typically, you have to be medically certified as unfit for employment. If you're unable to work due to alcohol or drug addictions, if you're at least a half-time student, but there may be other rules that apply in that circumstance, or if you are deemed obviously unfit for work based on the worker's observation or judgment. So again, that would come down to the evaluation of your DSS office. And here is some quick notes on making sure that you report your work activity or those exemptions. So if you are under the standard we just talked about, the able-bodied adults without dependents, you have to report your work activity to DSS. You should also report your work activity if you believe that you would meet one of those exemptions. And it's always best practice to assume that DSS does not have your correct and updated information on file. Anytime you move, change your phone number, change work activity or a new job, your household size changes, other benefits change, those are all things that you should consider reporting to DSS as soon as possible. Um, and our next category and topic for today is how to maximize your SNAP benefits once you become eligible. So again, I have a chart here to reference the maximum benefit available per household size. So your county Department of Social Services, that's what I've been referencing as DSS, they determine your monthly household SNAP benefit based on your income, the household size, and your expenses. In some, your household is the people who live together and buy or cook food together. So you can have someone living in your household who does not buy or cook food, and they would not be considered part of your household for SNAP purposes. Generally, a higher monthly income means that the household will receive less SNAP benefits, but higher monthly expenses means that the household will receive more SNAP benefits. So, your DSS office will do some calculations and compare your income to your expenses to calculate exactly what your benefit amount would be in that given recertification period. And how do you verify those expenses? DSS requires verifications of necessary things to determine your eligibility, while there are also recommended verifications that are optional and could help increase your benefit level. So it's always in your best interest to provide the recommended verifications. By providing those, it ensures that you'll get all the benefits that you may be entitled to. And here on the slide, you can see the distinction between required and recommended verifications. Required ones, just as we had mentioned before for the eligibility, require your identity, your citizenship or immigration status, your household size and composition, the social security numbers for those people in your household who are applying, and your income. And then the recommended verifications are things like expenses that may help increase your benefit amount. So, those, for example, could be things like your utilities and rent, property taxes, medical expenses, and legally obligated child support payments. And as I mentioned, you do have to recertify for SNAP. So, how you recertify. Most households are required to recertify for SNAP benefits every 6 months. DSS will mail that household a form that must be returned to DSS by the 15th day of the last month of their certification period so that you avoid any potential lapse in your SNAP benefits. Again, the best practice is to submit all required and recommended verifications by that time as well. So as you can see from these two calendars, as an example, we'll use Julie. Julie's household was certified for SNAP benefits from January 1st to June 30th. In early June, Julie will receive the recertification form from her DSS office. To be timely, DSS must receive that completed form and all required verifications by the 15th. If you fail to submit the required or recommended verifications by the 15th date, it may delay the processing of your recertification. And another thing to know while you're recertifying is any changes that may have happened during or leading up to your certification period. So, while you're in a certification period, you must make a report if any able-bodied adult without dependents stops doing the work activity as we discussed previously. If anyone in your SNAP household receives lottery or gambling winnings of $4,250 or more, or the household's income goes above 130% of the federal poverty line. Notably, you're not required to report any increases in expenses or decreases in income during your certification period, but reporting those changes could help increase your SNAP benefits. Now, moving on to the final section, SNAP appeals and knowing your rights. So, You have appeal rights. Anytime that DSS takes an action, meaning you get a notice from them and you disagree with that action because it impacts your SNAP benefits, you likely have appeal rights. Typically, they're outlined in the notices, so you can follow them quickly. But some important points for this mean an appeal means that you are going to request a hearing. Um, Again, that written notice from DSS should explain all of your appeal rights and any deadlines for that appeal. The two main types of SNAP hearings are a state fair hearing, where you would be contesting your eligibility, your benefit amount, or an overpayment on your file. And the second kind of SNAP hearing is an administrative disqualification hearing, generally due to an intentional program violation. And I'll explain both types of the hearings in more detail. So, first, a state fair hearing. This is an opportunity for a fair hearing. It must be provided to any household that is negatively impacted by a DSS action that affects your household's participation in SNAP. So that could go from termination to reduction in benefits, as two primary examples. To appeal, you have to make a clear statement, but that can be in spoken or in writing, to your DSS office that you want to present your case to a higher authority. Generally, a request for a state fair hearing must be made within 90 calendar days of the date of the notice. So, in many cases, DSS must continue your SNAP benefits at the prior level if the hearing request is made within 10 days. So, for example, if DSS is trying to reduce your SNAP benefits and you receive that notice, it will typically say on the form if you appeal within 10 days, you can maintain your current level of SNAP benefits until your case is decided. And the person who conducts the hearing officer is a state hearing officer out of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. So typically they're not based in your same DSS office. And moving on to the second kind of hearing, that is an administrative disqualification hearing. These kinds of hearings are only used when DSS believes that it has clear and convincing evidence that an individual has committed one or more acts of an intentional program violation. An IPV is when a SNAP household member knowingly, willfully, and with deceitful intent commits a fraudulent act, such as making a false statement or hiding information to receive benefits that you're not eligible for, misusing your EBT card by selling or trading benefits, or using SNAP benefits to buy food for or share food with someone who's not in your household. So this disqualification, DSS must prove that you knowingly, willfully, and with deceitful intent committed those acts. Further on this, your household again will receive a notice that you're being accused of an IPV. The notice will include the date for the local disqualification hearing, and DSS usually includes a waiver form with this notice that says you can agree to waive the disqualification hearing and accept the consequences. You should not sign this waiver. You do not have to sign this waiver if you want to contest what they're alleging in the notice. You should not sign the waiver, but just because the waiver is included does not mean you have to sign it. Next, the hearing officer for the local disqualification hearing is someone at your DSS, but they have not been previously involved in your case. That hearing officer must provide the SNAP household with a copy of the decision. Often it'll come by certified mail. And then your SNAP household has 15 calendar days from the date of that decision to appeal. After an appeal, the household will have a state disqualification hearing with a hearing officer from the North Carolina Department of Human Health and Services, just like the last other type of hearing. And the consequences, if you are found guilty of an intentional program violation, are quite steep. So for your first IPV, you're disqualified for 12 months from receiving those benefits. On your second IPV, you're disqualified for 24 months. Your third IPV, you are permanently disqualified from receiving SNAP benefits. If you misrepresent your residence and or identity to receive multiple benefits, whether that's in different counties or states, that results in a 10-year SNAP disqualification. Also, all members in the SNAP household may be jointly responsible for paying back those SNAP benefits that the household should not have received. So again, it's important to know your rights during the hearing process. Before the hearing, the household or your representative, if you have one, may review the case file and records that DSS plans to use at the hearing. You can do that by requesting them electronically or going down to your DSS office. The household may represent themselves, retain legal counsel, or have another spokesperson represent them. So it does not have to be an attorney who would represent you. The household may also bring your own witnesses and submit any evidence, like receipts and records or other statements that you believe would help explain your case. The household may also question or challenge any testimony or evidence presented by DSS. Finally, the household may request a postponement of up to 30 days if you need more time to prepare or seek legal counsel. And that is my presentation. If you have any questions, you can drop them into the Q&A box. Also on this slide is our helpline number if you want to request legal aid services that are free for civil legal issues.
Thank you so much, Juliana. And now we are going to open it up for questions. If you have a question, please type that either in the Q&A box on Zoom or in the comment section on Facebook. I just checked Facebook. There are none there. I will wait a few minutes to see if we have any questions. Um, Okay, as I'm not seeing any more questions, I am going to go ahead and say thank you all for joining us, and a special thanks to Juliana for presenting. If you would like to review anything we talked about today, we have posted the recording of today's event to our Facebook that will be immediately available. You can also access the recording beginning next week at any time on Legal Aid's YouTube page by selecting the Listen and Learn playlist. If you would like to register for one of our other Listeners Learn presentations, such as Medicaid, custody, record expunction, you can do so on our website at legalaidnc.org/clinics. Thank you. Have a great day.